Welcome to Homeschool Today. I'm Barry Johns, and along with my star reporters, we're bringing you Tuesday
in History.
This just in, I'm getting reports about an earthquake that happened in 1650. Let's bring in Hannah for this one. Hannah, what can you tell me about the earthquake?
Well, Dad, there was a massive earthquake that hit Cusco, Peru in 1650, where the Inca capital city was devastated. The earthquake leveled buildings and killed thousands of people, and with one exception, it almost destroyed the entire city. It was the Cathedral of Santo Domingo that made it through the earthquake. Today, there is a religious procession that takes place during the week of Easter that remembers the devastation and celebrates that all who entered the cathedral were protected by a statue of crucifixion of Jesus. Dad, back to you.
Thanks, Hannah. Next, we'd like to tell you about a hospital opening. Andrea, what can you report on that?
Well, Barry, back on this day in the year 1736, the first public hospital in the USA was opened. Bellevue Hospital was founded in a New York City almshouse for the poor. The hospital is still in existence today, where this Manhattan Hospital's emergency services are among the best in the country.
Andrea, didn't I also hear something about a battle in Paris? What are the details about that one?
Yes, that's correct, Barry. On this day in 1814, the Battle of Paris was fought. The Sixth Coalition that was made up of forces from Russia, Austria, and Prussia fought against the French Empire. After fighting for just one day throughout the suburbs of Paris, the French surrendered on March 31st. This ended the war and forced the Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte to abdicate his throne and go into exile on the island of Elba. While there, he raised a new army, escaped exile, and returned to Paris to take back his throne. This was the start of the 100 Days War that ended in his defeat at Waterloo, and the rest is, well, history.
I'm going to bring in our star reporter for this next one. Joshua, you have an interesting story to bring us about the Treaty of Kanagawa.
Yeah, Dad, it's pretty interesting. In 1854, Commodore Matthew Cabrith Perry, while representing the U.S. government, signed the Treaty of Kanagawa with the Japanese government in Tokyo. Prior to the treaty, the only foreign trade allowed there was with the Dutch and the Chinese, and only in Nagasaki under strict government monopoly. Foreigners were not allowed on the island and were subject to imprisonment or death if they attempted access. The treaty was signed under the threat of force by Perry and ended Japan's 220-year-old policy of national seclusion by opening 2 of its ports to American ships.
Thanks, Joshua. As always, excellent reporting. Okay, Noah's on standby in Indiana. What can you tell us about lighting up a city?
Well, Dad, it's a little bit more than that. On this day back in 1880, where I'm standing right now in Wabash, Indiana, became the first electrically lighted city in the world. The entire town was lit up by 4 brush lights that were mounted to the top of the city courthouse. Today, one of the original brush lights is on display at the Wabash County Courthouse. Dad, I know Mom is on standby in France and has something interesting about Gustave Eiffel.
Thanks, Noah. Take it away, Andrea.
In 1889, the Eiffel Tower was dedicated in Paris at a ceremony presided over by the tower's designer, Gustave Eiffel. The event was attended by French Prime Minister Pierre Tridard, a handful of other dignitaries, and roughly 200 construction workers. The tower was actually built to be the entrance for the 1889 World's Fair, and today the Eiffel Tower is the most visited paid monument in the world, with around 7 million visitors every single year.
Andrea, I think you and I need to go visit Paris. Hannah has a lightning round for us. Hannah, what do you have for us today?
Here we go, Dad. In 1917, the United States purchased the Danish West Indies for $25 million. And renamed them the U.S. Virgin Islands. In 1923, the first New York Dance Marathon took place. The winner, Alma Cummings, danced for 27 hours. Whoa, with 6 different dance partners. Moving on to 1932, the Ford Motor Company publicly unveiled its V8 engine. The year before Dad was born in 1963, after 90 years of service to the city of San Francisco, its streetcar service closed. Back to you, Dad.
Thanks, Hannah. And as always, solid reporting. Andrea's joined me in the studio today. Andrea, let's talk about daylight savings.
Well, Barry, in 1918, the first daylight savings time went into effect in the United States to better support the efforts for World War I. Daylight savings time was observed for only 7 months in 1918 and 1919. After the war ended, the law proved so unpopular that it was repealed in 1919. During World War II, President Roosevelt ordered a year-round daylight savings time called wartime. It was repealed again and later re-implemented.
Andrea, did you know that in 1948, after World War II ended in 1945, Europe lay in complete ruin? The great cities were destroyed, the economies throughout Europe were shattered, and the people were starving. The Soviet Union had taken control of Eastern Europe, and the vulnerability of Western European countries to the Soviets was of great concern to the free world. Then Secretary of State George Marshall, in his speech at Harvard University in 1947, proposed that the United States provide economic assistance to war-torn Europe. President Harry Truman called on Congress to provide funds to aid Europe. On this day, Congress overwhelmingly passed the Economic Cooperation Act of 1948. And on April 3rd, 1948, President Truman signed the act, and then it became known as the Marshall Plan. Andrea, Joshua's standing by with some cool news. Take it away, Joshua.
Dad, myself, and my other brother Eric all love to play guitar. In 1967, legendary guitarist Jimi Hendrix set fire to his black Fender Stratocaster live on stage for the first time when he was appearing at the Astoria in London.
We finish up today's portion of the news with a report out of Ireland.
In Ireland, tensions between Catholics and Protestants was common for centuries. Orange Walk by Protestants took place to honor an important date for Northern Ireland's Protestants. It commemorated the Battle of Boyne, where William of Orange defeated the Catholic King James II. On this day in 1970, an Orange Order parade triggered 3 days of rioting and violence. In Belfast, dozens of police and civilians are injured.
Thank you, Noah. Those were some sad times indeed. Well, everyone, I want to thank you for joining us on this week's Tuesdays Today in History. Let's close the show with
Famous birthdays in history.
1596, the French philosopher René Descartes. He thought, therefore he was born.
The year is 1685, and the German composer Johann Sebastian Bach was born.
1928, Canadian Hockey Hall of Fame right-wing Gordie Howe was born.
History is fascinating. So many things happen every day, all around us, and have for thousands of years. You can discover more about interesting history that happened on this day or any other day by searching online or visiting your local library. Please hit that like button at the bottom of the screen. It's what keeps us making these videos. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell so you'll be among the first to know as new videos are released.
In the famous words of Oscar Wilde, anybody can make history, but only great men can write it. Until next time, happy homeschooling!
Bye!
Peace.